was a feat of engineering. Harland and Wolff employed 15,000 men at that time, many of whom worked on Titanic over the 26 months it took to construct the hull for launch. At the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, there was a 6,000-ton structure which was over 200 feet high. It was known as the Aral Gantry. The gantry was constructed to house two massive ships that were being built for the White Star Line. It supported the giant cranes that lifted materials and equipment into the ship's hull using steel and rope slings made on-site by the yard's rigging teams. Housed in the Aral Gantry was a Harland and Wolff ship with the yard number 401. It became known the world over as Titanic, the largest passenger liner in the world.
At Southampton, the White Star Line had already constructed a massive deep-water ocean dock, covering almost 16 acres and dredged to a depth of 40 feet. England's premier passenger port was flourishing, with new shops, restaurants and businesses open to service the growing passenger trade. And job opportunities on board ship and in the docks brought migrants from all over Britain and Ireland. Almost 400.
They put me to work on 401. That's what we called her. We knew she'd be the largest passenger ship in the world, but we didn't call her Titanic then. I was there from the beginning. I watched the shipwrights lay the keel blocks. They set big wooden blocks on the slipway to start with. Then the keel is top of that, like a backbone. And the frames attached to that, like a skeleton. Workshops everywhere. It took weeks to find your way around. There were workshops of every trade you ever heard of. Painters, sailmakers, coppersmiths, boiler makers, cabinet makers. I even learned a bit about French polishing off them. Harlowith was a fine place to work, but dangerous. Every ship cost a life, and there'd be lots of injuries besides. I was in the engine works for a while. Very well equipped it was. That's where we built the triple expansion engines. Two of them, each as high as a 3-story house. I worked in the frame bending shop. You had heat steel beams in the furnace, then hook them onto slabs of cast iron and hammer them curved. It was skilled work. You had to bend them more than you needed because the frame straightened out a little when it cooled. The shell plates that made up the hull weighed up to 4.5 tons. They were taller than the da. The plates were overlapped on the edges. Some were raised, one after another. We called it clincher. One of the foremen taught me years ago. That's how you built these ships. I worked as a heater boy. You had to heat the rivets on a wee plate. You pump the bellows till the rivet was white hot. Then you get a hold of it with your tongs and throw it up to the catcher. And he put it in the hole in the plate with the holder up. There were two of us on the other side of the plate to hold her up. We had to hammer the rivet so it filled the hole before it turned dull red. The double bottom. That's a wee space we called the tanks, made up of steel plates. The rest of the rivet squad all had to fit into that gap. You only had candles for light. And the constant hammering against the shell plates. You could hear it all over Belfast. Some of those boys ended up stone deaf, so they did. We were paid 31 bob a week. The heater boy and catcher got 16 bob. But we all worked the same 54 hours. The upper deck was steel too, and part of the strength of the ship. There's no straight lines on a ship, and when you look down the weather deck, you can see the shear of the hull was stuck.
At 7 a.m., Captain Edward Johnson